Well, good evening. It sounds like you're already having a good time. Getting acquainted. I would say be friendly. And looks like we have a very full house tonight. That's wonderful. And my name is Reverend Nancy Wilson. I'm the co-senior pastor here at SunCoast Cathedral MCC, and I'm so glad to welcome you on behalf of our church. We love to open our church and share music or comedy and just to be a place where people can gather. We are so pleased to welcome Faye Jacobs. I know there are Rehoboth Beach people here in the crowd, right? Okay, yes. All right. Faye is a woman of many gifts and many talents, a wonderful person, but most of all, she's very, very funny. And we are so glad to welcome her. She's performed at several MCC churches, she says, and we are so pleased to welcome her tonight. We also want to say we're here Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. We welcome all people, everyone, to come and share, especially in this week, Palm Sunday tomorrow. But more than anything, we hope that, we all need a laugh. In these days and these times, we need to laugh more than ever to keep our strength up for all that we have to do in the world. So will you please give a warm SunCoast welcome to Faye Jacobs.
I heard my peeps are out there. All righty. Well, hello, Venice, on this one. Of course. And my name is Faye Jacobs. And right. What is that coming from? I don't know where that's coming from. The hell with it, okay. Always said, nothing is ever so horrible if it's worth the story you can tell. Some are fun, some are distressing, and a lot of them are absolutely infuriating. But they have all been fodder for the storyteller in me. And frankly, this legacy about taking lemons and turning them into typewritten lemonade was the best advice my father ever gave to me, because the rest of it from that era tended towards, it wouldn't kill you to wear a dress to your sister's wedding, and you'll never find a husband if you buy a house with another girl. Although he was right on both counts. Along with my almost 40 years of watching, participating in, and writing about our LGBT march towards full civil rights, I've taken time to have a lot of fun too, and I've written about those things. And following my dad's advice, I try to find something really worthwhile to take from every stupid, annoying, or awful thing that happens to me, up to now, including aging gracelessly. They say our 60s are the new 40s. I don't think so. Have you seen those commercials? Jamie Lee Curtis is constipated. Tommy Lee Jones has a reverse mortgage so he can stay home until he dies. And Joe Theismann has no testosterone. I mean, how is this even possible? My doctor diagnosed me with senile sclerosis, and I panicked until I learned it was just a cataract. At first, some insurance company bozo told me it couldn't be removed because it wasn't ripe yet. I felt like a tomato. Finally, the clerk decided I could have one eye done. Within hours after the surgery, I could see better than I had in years. I couldn't believe my eye. But I looked in the mirror and I screamed. It wasn't a new wrinkle, it was thousands of them. Oh, look, all right, I'm going to warn you. Whatever you all do, under no circumstances, put a magnifying mirror down on a flat surface, bend over, and look into it. You've done it, haven't you? Gravity turns you into a Shar-Pei. Okay, have you been to an organ recital? That's where your friends start reciting which of their bodily organs are deteriorating. I was at a party where somebody had a tiny oxygen meter clipped to his finger, and we all had to pass it around to see if we were still breathing. My God, we're passing around a medical device like we used to pass weed in a bong. We used to smoke joints, not replace them. But for somebody aging so gracelessly, I try to keep up pretty well. I never thought I'd become a digital junkie, texting and surfing and streaming and relying on GPS to get where I used to know how to get by myself. On my way here from Delaware, I was using the iPhone GPS, and I had to stop at a rest stop to go to the bathroom. I was in the very process of sitting down, nearly in a full squat, when my pocket announced, when possible, make a U-turn. Now, my latest obsession is the digital step counter. When my low-tech pedometer fell off my shoe, I stepped on it, which meant I was doing crunches, but not the kind that helped my abs. So I downloaded a step-counting app to my smartphone. That worked okay, but if the phone isn't in my pocket, I don't get credit for the steps. Well, I just found the solution. The Las Vegas Electronics Show introduced the Smart Bra. Yes, people, the grand mammary of all smart devices is a brassiere. According to the manufacturer, it measures your heart rate and oxygen level and steps through a piece of clothing already worn daily. Seriously, while I've been prone to leave my phone or pedometer at home, this is one item where nobody has to warn me, don't leave home without it. So how does this new kind of boob tube work, okay? I'm always pulling out my phone to see how far I've trekked. If I check my Smart Bra at the mall, will I be, cited for indecent exposure? I mean, how reliable is this thing? Will it, dare I say, hold up? The whole concept just leaves me hanging. I mean, how can an underwire bra also be wireless? I mean, what are they talking about? And along with the regular support it provides, does it have tech support? And it better have a new, really good battery life. I shudder to think about going to the airport and plugging in my tits. Maybe they can engineer the thing to speak, reporting blood pressure and heart rate like a GPS. Imagine hearing that emotionless dashboard voice broadcasting your vital signs to the world as it lifts and separates. Your data will no longer be just Victoria's Secret. But I digress. I am up to date, and I am not feeling my age. My friends are getting married left and right, and we're all up on the dance floor with our hands waving in the air, singing "I Will Survive." I absolutely love it. But 35 years ago, in the dawn of the 1980s, it was very, very different, wasn't it? I was peeking out of the closet, terrified to tell friends that I was gay, and my family didn't know. Paranoid and miserable, I loitered in the library, stealthily reading up on homosexualities. Hey, look, back then the news was not good. It seemed I'd have to learn to play softball. On a trip to Cape Cod, a very aware friend took me to Provincetown, hoping I'd see all the women together and feel comfy and start coming out of the closet. At the famous Women Crafts bookstore, they took one look at me and automatically gave me the 10% lesbian discount. I wanted to go through the floor. But then I got a little braver. After a variety of dating adventures, nights at gay bars in dreadful neighborhoods, and meeting women at house parties, I hoped it might be possible to actually settle down and have a real life with somebody. On a cold March night, I screwed up my courage to drive to downtown Baltimore, of all places, to a women's dance at the Glass Pavilion at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Still in hiding, I thought, what kind of moron books a gay dance in a glass room? I was not sure I could make myself go in. The ballroom actually was glass, and from the parking lot, I could look up and I could see purple balloons and lesbians. I got the vapors and very nearly did not go in. But I am thankful I did, because I met my partner Bonnie that night. We danced and we talked, and the more we talked, the more improbable a match it seemed. She'd been out and proud since age 18. I was in my early 30s and still in the closet. Oh my goodness, she did play softball. I wanted my diamonds and jewelry, thank you. She loved camping. I refused to sleep any place with grass and dirt between my bed and the toilet. I had never had a soft-shell crab. She had never had a knish. I directed plays. She saw Hello Dolly once. Oh my goodness, it got worse. My Manhattan clan loved chamber music and contemporary art. Her people hailed from Virginia, decorated early American, and her grandparents owned their own cows. By April, we were an item, and the following November, we bought that house together. Somehow, our differences worked. I directed shows, Bonnie ran the lights. We went boating, not camping. Now look, we still needed coolers and bug spray. But there was Berber on the way to the toilet. And it was the disco era. We danced to Donna Summer at glitzy gay bars or socialized at clandestine parties in whispered locations. We gathered with gay friends for brunches and dinner parties and pride marches, joyous to be the outlaws that we were and open with our own crowd. But we'd have to sneak home to the suburbs, no public hand-holding ever allowed. I could lose my job if my boss knew. Worse, people were being bashed in the streets outside the gay clubs. By the time we both turned 40, I edited a newspaper and Bonnie owned a dental laboratory, and we kept a really low profile in our very straight neighborhood. At a rare community party, half the people were afraid to talk to us, and the other half treated us like their pet lesbians. Life was pretty, that's happened, right? life was pretty good, but I wanted better. A more welcoming place. And we heard about Rehoboth Beach, 2 hours east of Washington, D.C., with a few gay-owned shops and restaurants. And believe it or not, since the 1940s, it was known as a gay enclave, with stories about young, closeted Capitol Hill staffers sneaking off to Rehoboth for weekends during the Eisenhower and Kennedy administrations. That trend continued and grew, and so we went to check it out. Well, the beach and the boardwalk were pretty nice, but what was absolutely stunning was to be in a public restaurant in the early 1990s and toast to our anniversary without giving the waiter an aneurysm or frightening the straight couples at the next table. In fact, they celebrated with us. And we could shop where people didn't automatically assume we were sisters using the same credit card, or worse, mother and daughter. That was fun. Back in Maryland, just to keep our secret, we'd shop in shifts, like when we were looking for mattresses. Did any of you do this? We'd go in separately, bounce up and down on the beds, making no eye contact whatsoever, and then run out and compare notes in the parking lot. Anything to avoid the horror of outing ourselves. I remember one time I was in the emergency room, doubled over with gallstones. They took me to X-ray, and they asked, "Is there any chance you're pregnant?" No, not a chance. Are you sure? Absolutely. There's not a slightest chance you could be pregnant? Loopy with drugs, I blurted, "No, I don't sleep with men, and my biological clock stopped ticking before the lesbian baby boom." The nurse checked no and walked right into the wall. Lesbians and gay men, we were totally invisible. It was part of life. I dealt with it, but in Rehoboth it was much easier. It wasn't perfect. Even as we partied at the gay bars and restaurants, apart from the gay venues, name-calling and overt bigotry still reigned. There was a terrible gay bashing on the end of the boardwalk, and anti-gay t-shirts hung in store windows, and the thought of gay marriage was absolutely a joke. A bumper sticker started showing up on cars, "Keep Rehoboth a family town." Oh boy, we knew what that meant. But it was still much better than being isolated in the suburbs. And with many of our DC friends buying weekend homes at the beach, we wanted one too, but we really couldn't. All of our disposable income was going into our beloved 27-foot powerboat on Chesapeake Bay. "Hey, why don't we just move the boat to Rehoboth?" Captain Bonnie said. We could do that? We could. And for the summer of 1995, we rented a slip at the marina on Rehoboth Bay, and life was fantastic. Weekends living on the boat, meeting people, and occasionally having to pluck our little schnauzer Max out of the dock water. But one day, I went to a local hamburger place. While waiting for takeout, we heard the owner shouting vicious, disgusting, insulting gay slurs, including new words I could call myself that I hadn't even heard before. Disgusted, I wrote a letter to the editor of a Rehoboth LGBT magazine called Letters from Camp. I figured people should be warned. Within a day, the editor called me saying he'd print the letter and was meeting with the mayor to go talk to that vile business owner. They did, and although there's no data to connect the two incidents, that business went belly up real soon after. All right. I learned that Letters was a magazine published by Camp Rehoboth, a gay and lesbian service organization dedicated to making Rehoboth a place with room for all. Camp Rehoboth wanted to be sure Rehoboth was a family town, but for all kinds of families. When the editor heard I was a writer, he asked me to submit a column about our boat trip from Maryland. I did, and that launched my column in each issue for the last 23 years. Listen, We got so broke from boating, you can't believe it. One time, after an afternoon with friends, we got the boat's propeller entangled in a crab pot, stranding us in the middle of the bay. Have you ever been stuck before? Somebody asked. Well, yes, I told them about an incident where Bonnie and I, with 2 other women along, could not restart the boat. We needed a hot wire, and oddly, not one of us lesbians had that skill. A good Samaritan came along, climbed aboard, and flopped onto his back beneath the boat's dashboard. Bonnie handed him requested tools. Screwdriver? She handed it over. Wrench? She handed it over. Pair of dikes? Excuse me? We looked urgently at each other, knowing we had 2 pair aboard, not knowing which couple to sacrifice. Dikes, you know, needle-nose pliers. Have you got any? The mechanic was mercifully unaware of his double entendre. The 4 of us clamped our mouths shut, clutched our sides to keep from exploding. The next day we asked around. Yes, needle-nose pliers really are called dikes. So here we were, stuck again. I don't believe they're called that, one of our guests said. I've never heard of that. I hadn't either, I said. When the marina rescue boat arrived, the mechanic looked down at the crab cage stuck to the prop, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Do you have a pair of dikes?" Now there were 7 people clutching their sides and screaming. The incident proved what we'd surely suspected. You never know where a pair of dikes will come in real handy. Living on that boat. Sunday nights, after the tourist event, the pier became a de facto gay bar, with friends firing up the blender and boombox. We'd leave to go back to work on Monday morning, knowing we lived at home, but had a life in Rehoboth. 3 summers later, we added a schnauzer puppy named Moxie to our family, and boat life became a circus. So after our many weekends on the bay, we sold the boat and bought a Rehoboth condo. Now we were townies. And we took part in fundraisers and happy hours and art openings. We made up for all the years we felt isolated and other. Rehoboth was as gay-friendly a place as we had ever been. And on weekends, we even had time to get involved in that other infamous lesbian pastime, animal rescue. Somehow my spouse had been recruited to save 4 cats and a dog from death row at our local shelter by bringing them to a volunteer. I hear snickers of volunteers. Well, where are we taking them, I asked, realizing that my question implied consent. Just an hour or so up the road. So, okay, like lion tamers, we stuffed 4 squirming, snarling, hissing felines into 2 small cat carriers and put them in our official lesbian car, the Subaru Outback. And then there was Whitey, the blind terrier. As Bonnie lifted him out of his crate, he emitted a blood-curdling scream with a stream of projectile poop pellets. I leapt back to avoid the flying missiles and got a good look at the dog. Well, at least I thought it was a dog. Maybe a muskrat terrier. I'm really not sure. Once we got ugly Whitey back in his crate, we headed north. From the cargo hold came a series of low, rumbling growls, then random spitting and hissing, followed by an ear-splitting scream. I hadn't heard such a good cat fight since Crystal and Alexis slugged it out on Dynasty. Then the Meow Mix tried another tactic. They started sending bodily fluids out of every orifice they owned. Oh my God, they were peeing and coughing up hairballs in unison. Just to breathe, I wound up hanging my head out the window like a Cocker Spaniel. So I asked Bonnie where in Delaware we were going, and it turned out we were going to New Jersey. An awful lot closer to Manhattan than Rehoboth. Then the rescue lady calls and says she's going to be 2 hours late to the rendezvous. It's okay, Bonnie said, we can have dinner. Oh, like I had an appetite. So we arrive at the rest stop at least a half an hour before the dog and cat deal is scheduled to come down. Nobody loiters at a rest stop. People just run in on their way somewhere else. So there we were, leisurely checking out, I swear, the Jersey Turnpike souvenirs. We dropped $34 between hamburgers, magazines, and commemorative Turnpike mugs. Back in the car, the cargo bed was eerily quiet, and there'd been a ceasefire in the alimentary canal warfare. They were all asleep. So Bonnie and I sat reading supermarket tabloids by dome light. And at one point, the light flickered. You don't have the headlights on, do you? And that's when the car's battery wheezed its last and plunged us into total darkness. Now we needed a jump start. Was this any way to thank missionaries on the Underground Railroad? Finally, the tardy animal rescue lady shows up and we're transferred the Wild Kingdom to her car. They were Jersey girls' problem now. We got home at midnight. For the record, there weren't enough little scented evergreen trees for to hang in the car to mask the souvenir smells. But of course, I looked at it this way. Dinner, tolls, and souvenirs, $43. Jump start, $27. Saving Whitey's life, priceless. Let me tell you, it was so tough going back into the newspaper closet after writing for letters. At work, I had to lie. Just try and write a story without referring to the other person involved, or worse, changing the pronouns. Bonnie was a dangling participle. It was painful. It was painful. Now, when I started writing my stories in letters, I could be honest, candid. Everything was true. It was so glorious, and I realized it was time to put my personal and my work life together. So in 1999, I quit my job of 20 years. We listed and sold the Maryland house, sold the little beach condo, and bought a house just outside downtown Rehoboth. Bonnie moved her lab into the house, and I took a tourism job hawking our little beach town. I vowed I would never again stay closeted on a job. Never stop being honest about my life. And we were now full-timers in a place where you couldn't swing a cat without hitting a lesbian. It was heaven. It was heaven. Of course, I knew I moved to Rehoboth. But it wasn't until weeks later it dawned on me that this New Yorker actually moved to Delaware. Just 3 miles out of town was Wilson's General Store. Their sign read, Notary Public, groceries, hardware, sandwiches, and ammunition. Because you never know when you need eggs and buckshot at the same time. In town, I was used to business cards at cash registers for realtors and day spas. Just outside Rehoboth, business cards offered chicken coop repairs and deer cutting. Whatever that is. Who's surprised that before my first Scrapple Festival, I was a Scrapple virgin? But there I was, chomping down on that peculiar breakfast meat, when I looked up and I saw the 40-foot Scrapple Company sign listing the ingredients as pig snouts and lard. Just then the hog calling contest began and people were wailing, "Soo-wee, soo-wee," which was roughly the same sound I was making spitting out my pig snouts. And you should have seen the Scrapple carving contest. Sculptors made everything from Mickey Mouse to a graceful woman's torso. You know, actually, raw Scrapple is a pretty good carving medium. Although, as the day got warmer, the stuff started to droop, and the breasts on that torso went from 32B to 44 long. So I was game for everything in my new state except Scrapple. Some traditions really are too hard to swallow. And as a columnist, I watched a lot of the world go by in the late 90s, commenting on it all. Remember the Unabomber? And Ellen DeGeneres coming out on TV? And, oh yeah, and of course, the Bush-Gore electile dysfunction? We kept busy learning to cook, or trying anyway. Have you ever compared what gay men and gay women bring to a party? We bring a paper plate with a pound of crab meat plopped on a slab of cream cheese with cocktail sauce drooling over it like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The guys bring bone china, doilies, and... All right. Don't forget the canapes with marzipan. In an attempt to up our game, one boyfriend tried to teach us the perfect consistency for lemon curd. When terms like mousse and meringue baffled us, he said, "Look, just stir it until it looks like spackle." We got that. In the late 90s, we had to say goodbye to our elderly Max. But we bought Moxie a puppy named Patty, so we had 2 schnauzers, and the 4 of us spent a lot of time at home at Schnauzer Haven, stockpiling Dinty Moore beef stew, jugs of booze, flashlights and Snickers bars, counting down to the turn of the millennium. And that ultimate geek tragedy, the Y2K bug. What the hell was that? Our computers did not turn into 2-slot toasters, and the world did not end. Well, mine almost did. We set the alarm for 4:30 a.m. on New Year's Eve day to watch folks on the island nation of Tonga be first to welcome the 21st century. Groggy and disoriented, I watched with one eye open as a group of half-naked Tonga Islanders held hands and danced around a roaring campfire. Then I heard my spouse say, "Hey, Faye, we found your people." What? I mean, really, look, Faye, little round people with short arms. Look, even I had to laugh because it was true. I have short arms. This is supposed to be 3/4. Sometimes I have to get my sleeves hemmed. We got a top-loading washing machine, and I have to lean over and retrieve my socks and underpants with salad tongs. Although I claim to be from the Jewish section of Tonga. So we laughed our way into the year 2000. New year, new century, lots of promise. It did turn out to be a disaster for us. Bonnie suffered a relatively simple knee injury, then developed scary, life-threatening blood clots in her lungs and spleen. She lost a kidney and was hospitalized for 6 weeks. It was a nightmare. Now, usually Bonnie and I had our heavy carton of legal documents handy to prove we were next of kin. But when this nightmare began, our Delaware medical power of attorneys and wills were signed but not yet notarized. In a scenario screaming, "Nothing is so bad if you get a story to tell," we had to call the notary public to the emergency room for the patient's signature. There was Bonnie hooked up to oxygen and beeping monitors and a morphine drip, and we're asking her to sign legal paperwork. She was sure she was going to the white light while her spouse was changing the will. Nah. You know what we were doing. We were just jumping through all those legal hoops required to gain the protection all married heterosexual patients had by default. And unless you have been there, and I bet many of you have, it's impossible to describe the fear that comes over you when you're shut out of information on your partner's condition or terrified you won't be able to have a say in her care. 18 years ago, I had to rely on the kindness of strangers to recognize that I belonged as part of the discussion. It was debilitating and frightening. But after many months, Bonnie was well again. We could laugh about the changing of the will, and we could relax. Well, Bonnie could relax. I don't relax. I think you should try Tai Chi, Bonnie said. Heck, I don't know Tai Chi from chai tea. Maybe I should try yoga. So I did. I went to a gentle yoga class, which is a polite way of saying it's for the elasticity challenged. But I have to say, yoga is non-judgmental. If you can't stretch to a specific position, they give you a dowel in your hand to bridge the gap. If you can't reach around your thunder thighs to pull your knees to your chest, they give you a canvas belt to help. I appreciated the assist, but I looked like a piece of furniture in a Beacon's van. And with all our apparatus lying about, it looked like an S&M club in there. You know, it is possible to relax too much. Under the heading of "that's okay, it's supposed to happen," certain yoga positions can cause flatulence. At one time or another, everybody in our class produced an audible emission. I really don't think the kind of meditation we're encouraged to practice is praying you'll get through the hour without breaking wind. So if yoga relaxed me too much, what else could I try? I poured myself a drink, sat down to learn about all the different relaxation or massage disciplines. Do I want Swedish massage? Aromatherapy with essential oils? Or shiatsu or reflexology? And you know, reading about the stuff, schnauzers at my feet, cocktail in my hand, was very, very relaxing. So I invented the vodka with essential olives therapy. Ask for the room with the schnauzers. Oh boy. Then, you know what came next? 9/11. The only thing I can say about that horror was that our families, whether biological or by choice, are what got us through. By the following weekend, I was rehearsing a musical review I was directing for a local theater. It showcased 1940s swing music and the inspiring tunes of World War II. Both the pianist and I had tears rolling down our faces as he played the White Cliffs of Dover. Boy, that London Blitz wasn't just over there anymore. Our trio of performers rehearsed in one of the cast members' living room, and it was a gorgeous afternoon, and we had wide open windows, and the music wafted all over our neighborhood. When we got to the first act finale, God Bless America, I glanced out the window and I saw that the man across the street had stopped mowing his lawn and stood, hat in hand, head bowed, just listening. It took our breath away. And for a short while, we were no longer Democrat or Republican, gay or straight, black, white, brown. We were Americans. Of course, when the patriotic glow wore off, it was very clear that we were still not full-service Americans. In 2003, Delaware was grappling with a simple anti-discrimination bill and having trouble passing even that. Gay marriage had just been approved in Canada and was on its way in Massachusetts, and a lot of us spoke out and lobbied for our rights. One day, I got a call from the daily newspaper asking me what I thought about the gay marriage debate. I gave them a soundbite about wanting equal civil rights and having nothing to do with religion. They quoted me verbatim, adding, "Said Faye Jacobs, comma, gay activist." When did that happen? I didn't consider myself a gay activist. I was a columnist. I happened to be gay. I wrote about my life and things important to me. So I guess it was true. My issues did make me a gay activist. Pretty cool. And totally by coincidence, Bonnie and I had planned a vacation to Vancouver, Canada, where gay marriage was suddenly legal. Carpe diem, baby. We seized the day, found a Canadian gay marriage website, and a few emails later, the whole darn thing was arranged. On our wedding morning, we walked to an insurance office and requested a marriage license. Now, gay marriage was so new in Canada that the revised forms hadn't even arrived yet. So an apologetic clerk crossed out the word groom and hand wrote a second bride. With shaky signatures, we signed on the dotted lines, paid our fee, and clutching our marriage license, we walked back to the hotel where we would be married in the corner of the lobby. Instead of the civil ceremony being sterile, as I suspected, it was incredibly sweet and personal. We stood looking at each other, repeating after the commissioner, smiling, fidgeting with the rings, and soaking up every single minute. I savored the words, "I solemnly declare I do not know of any lawful impediment why I, Faye, may not be joined in legal matrimony to Bonnie." During those few minutes, we drew a small crowd of hotel patrons who applauded our kiss. Our only regret was that friends and family could not have been there to share it with us. But it was 2003, and we were thrilled to be legally wed. Who knew we would come home to Delaware to find we were common criminals? Actually, we were uncommon criminals because we were guilty of a charge few could claim and of which nobody had ever been convicted. I'm going to take a short intermission now, and when I come back, you will hear the criminal tale of Bonnie and Snide. Thank you. Okie dokie. I took my other earring off so I don't look like a pirate of the Caribbean. Okay. It's totally true. Is this thing making funny noises? Okay. It's true. After getting married in Canada and coming home, we were criminals. I was guilty as charged for marrying my same-sex partner in Canada and subject to a $100 fine or 30 days in the slammer. I know, we got married in Canada. Delaware didn't even permit same-sex marriage. I didn't get it. But not only was it illegal to conduct and recognize same-sex marriage in Delaware, but according to the sneaky and preemptive state charter, anybody residing in Delaware who goes someplace else to tie the same-sex knot cannot come back and live as a married couple without being slapped with a fine. Failure to pay meant jail. It was in the code, sandwiched between all kinds of other punishable offenses. Did you know that 2 paupers can't marry either? Now there were 2 viable counts against me. But being jailed for being married, now that was pretty scary. And the county clerk was making noises about cracking down. Would we have to pay up or go up the river? Would both criminals be in the same cell? If there were more than 4 of us, would it be a tea dance? Oh my God, would the Humane Society remove our schnauzers from the home? This was really scary. Stunned and appalled, I fumed. What's a wife to do? Pay the fine? No effing way. We did the crime, so would we do the time? Truth is, we returned to Delaware, happily living as a married couple, and nobody cared. We weren't arrested, we weren't fined. I was terribly disappointed. We still had no legal protections, of course, but life was pretty good in our gay-friendly bubble of Rehoboth Beach. We took time out from work and lobbying for anti-discrimination bills to go on a cruise. Our luck, we got on a ship that had just suffered an outbreak of the dreaded norovirus. However, we were assured that the vessel had been thoroughly swabbed and disinfected, and we were merely being cautioned by the Centers for Disease Control. I'm going on a cruise. I don't expect to be warned by the CDC. I expect to be warned by Weight Watchers. So off we go. We're told to wash our hands incessantly and take precautions against touching contaminated doorknobs and railings. What precautions? I'm going to Cozumel. I didn't bring mittens with me, okay? We line up to board, and nattily-dressed cruise officials start squirting our palms with antibacteria gel. It felt like it was 1912 and I'm at Ellis Island getting deloused. I remember reading that effective hand washing requires 30 seconds in soapy water, which is roughly equivalent to the time it takes to sing the birthday song. Okay, I can do that. As I board the ship, I am again shot with complimentary disinfectant. I'm surprised the gangplank photographer was able to take our souvenir picture without including the squirter patrol in it. After unpacking in my stateroom, I head upstairs to the lounge, touching the elevator button with the hem of my blouse. I'm going to the 12th floor. It raises my shirt practically over my head. And I'm trying to figure out what's worse, the trots or being a flasher. Looking down to avoid the stares from the crowd, I see the elevator floor has a panel reading Saturday. They must change it daily so we know how many more days we have to avoid dysentery. From the lounge, I visit the casino. To humor the CDC, I keep a cocktail napkin around my drink. I stretch my shirt sleeve over my hand, pulling my neck and head to my shoulder as I safely try to crank the one-armed bandit. I look like Quasimodo at sea. All evening, everywhere we go, swarms of staff squirt us with antiseptic gel. I am so clean I squeak. The next day, I used the whole restroom and washed my hands. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday. Adjacent hand washers step away from the crazy lady. And you know, it was kind of cruel because after washing and blotting my hands with a paper towel, I was expected to touch the germ-riddled horror story of a door handle just to get out of the bathroom. So I keep the soggy paper towel in my hand, open the door, hold it ajar with my ass, and extend my too short arm toward the trash can to toss the paper towel. Shaquille O'Neal couldn't sink it, if you excuse the word sink in a cruise story. So I give up and I tuck the sodden towel in my pocket and go back to my deck chair. When I look down, I see that the soggy paper towel has made a very unattractive wet spot on my shorts. I get up to go change, and when the boat, it hits sort of a rogue ocean swell, and I lurch forward, catching myself hands down on the towel rental counter. I'm still standing, but I'm open-palmed on the shiny metal table, 1,000 filthy fingerprints looking up and mocking me. So I said, the hell with it. I go get out of my wet shorts and into a dry martini. And for the rest of the cruise, I say, screw norovirus, the hell with germophobia. I take alcohol internally to ward off germs. Right? I throw caution to the wind. I eat, I drink, I make merry. I dunk in the pool with the germy masses. I sit with coughing theater crowds. I touch any damn surface I please. Days later, I knew it was time to come home when I looked down at my swollen ankles and realized I was retaining vodka. I expected the rug to say, it's Friday, do you know where your liver is? I may have been pickled, but I was norovirus free. And when I came home, I had work to do because I found out that I inherited a publishing company. The publishing house was originally called Naiad Press. You may have heard of it. It was started in 1974 by 4 lesbians. 2 of them lived in Rehoboth Beach. There was Anita Marchant, a lesbian novelist who wrote florid lesbian romance under the name of Sarah Aldridge, and her partner, Muriel Crawford. Now, Naiad Press became the first, and in its day, the most successful lesbian publishing company in the country, possibly the world. And of course, in the 70s, you couldn't even buy a lesbian novel or a gay novel in a bookstore. You had to mail order it, and it arrived like pornography in brown paper. That's how it was marketed. We'll send it to you and nobody has to know. No wonder it took us so long to feel any pride at all. In 1995, Anita and Muriel left Naiad Press, and by this time they were in their 80s, and founded A&M Books of Rehoboth. It was Anita who suggested I compile my letters columns into a book for A&M to publish. I was stunned at the suggestion, but really, really thrilled to be working with these pioneering women. Now, I could do a whole evening about Anita and Muriel, and maybe I will sometime, but for now, I'll just say they were brave women and fierce feminists. It was 1974 when Anita dared to write the first lesbian romance with a happy ending. At the end, nobody had to be thrown under a bus. Before that, this is really true, before that, one of the lesbians in any novel had to die an ugly death. It's true. The precious few lesbian images in the movies were Sandy Dennis getting hit by a falling tree in The Fox and Shirley MacLaine hanging herself in The Children's Hour. Nice, right? Anita changed the dynamic and started a revolution. And in Rehoboth, every Saturday night for at least 30 years, from exactly 5 to 6:30 p.m., The ladies hosted a front porch cocktail salon with neighborhood crowd like clergy and writers and artists and musicians, activists and politicians. Anita and Muriel were Rehoboth's Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas. They loved each other, publishing, and Scotch whiskey. Not necessarily in that order. I adored those old ladies. One time I was directing the play The Vagina Monologues. It was winter and way too cold out for Anita and Muriel, then in their 90s, to come out to the theater. So we did a dress rehearsal for them in their own living room. The three actresses performed beautifully, evoking giggles from the scotch-sipping audience of two. And then it happened. When one of the actresses came to the naughty C word describing a female body part, she looked at grandmotherly Anita and Muriel and just couldn't go there. All she got out was, gah, gah. And before any rescue could come from me or the other actresses, Anita leaned forward and said, "Really, my dear, we're rather well aware of that word. In 1975, we published the C word coloring book." And Muriel smiled a naughty smile. Another time, Muriel and Anita came back from the doctor with the bad news that he was worried about their drinking. Not about the actual quantity of scotch they consumed, but that each evening the 91 and 94-year-old enjoyed 2 cocktails in the living room before retiring. The doctor worried about their being able to maneuver without incident as they toddled off to the bedroom. He cautioned them to keep the ritual to 1 drink only. The ladies took the news surprisingly well. It wasn't until almost a year later, when I was sent to the bedroom to get a sweater for Muriel, that I learned the truth. There on the floor by the bed were 2 Tiffany cut crystal glasses and a half-a-gallon jug of Dewar's. Yeah, they only had 1 drink each night in the living room. When Anita and Muriel, who had been a couple for 57 years, passed away, they both passed away in 2005, and I became owner of A&M Books. And I tried my best to live up to their example in both literature and cocktails. Now, I assumed that my first book, called As I Lay Frying, and the collections that followed would be just local books to be sold in Rehoboth and maybe placed on rental house coffee tables. I was surprised and really thrilled when several gay bookstores, and in 2004 there were still quite a number, they picked up the book. Then reviews started appearing on Amazon and in magazines, and the next thing I knew, I was selling in both alternative and mainstream bookstores nationwide. All of my books have done the same, and I have been very, very lucky, thanks to Anita and Muriel. It's been a blast, but it wasn't easy running a small independent publishing house. Literally, it was my house. The shed was the Rehoboth Book Depository. My spouse was fulfillment manager, and a schnauzer worked security. It was really a lot of fun. Just recently, A&M Books merged with Bywater Books, and Anita and Muriel's legacy will continue to be celebrated. Isn't that great? Now, being an author has really been fun. I love going all over the country for events like Women's Week in Provincetown and book signings, and besides, there are other perks, like what happened to me at New York City Pride Day 2005. It was 90, oh, there we go. It was nuts, okay? It was 93 degrees out by noon as we stood along Lower Fifth Avenue waiting for the front of the parade. In my sweaty hand was the 2005 Pride Guide, a big glossy magazine listing events and sponsors and the parade route. There was a quote on top of page 3. In 16-point type, it said, "Pride marches were born of brave individuals having the courage to come out as gay in often hostile, unsafe environments." And it was attributed to Faye Jacobs, "As I Lay Frying." Holy cow, I had no idea who put it there, where they got the quote, where they found my book. I was thrilled they did. I mean, there were my words in the thousands, in the hands of thousands and thousands of people, with thousands more programs in towering stacks, free for the taking, inside every city store and bar and restaurant. I mean, I was astounded and honored, it was a little, Well, the revving of the motorcycle engines meant that dykes on bikes led the parade, followed by the New York City marching band from the police department, followed by 3 hours of floats, and the theme, "Equal Rights, No More, No Less," brought cheers. Later, retreating uptown, I could see the streets still teeming with people. Gutters littered a foot deep in plastic water bottles and other garbage, and the corner trash cans bursting with, among pizza boxes and Coke cans, thousands and thousands of discarded Pride Guides. Fame is so fleeting. One day, as I sat drafting a column responding to the latest nonsense in favor of discrimination, I saw a commotion across the street and I went to investigate. There in the garage stood my neighbor and a pal, each holding a black and white furry baby in their arms. The women wore sly smiles. "Want a kitten?" said my neighbor. I eyed the long bushy tails on the fur babies suspiciously. "What are they, baby skunks?" "Yes," said a pal, a volunteer for a wildlife organization. "Aren't they cute?" "Yeah, but aren't they going to spray you?" "Well, they're too young to spray yet," said the volunteer. "We've been holding them and they're fine. You want to hold one?" Look, I had anti-discrimination on my mind. I did not want to be skunk-phobic. So I held out my hands, cradled one of the pointy-nosed, bright-eyed cuties in my arms. The little guy looked up at me and, struck by sudden puberty, let loose with some sort of aerosol from his butt. I tossed Junior back to the volunteer just as the girls started wrinkling their noses and backing away. I stood there reeking. Why me? So much for them being too young to spritz any. At which point my neighbor said, "You have to get your clothes off. And not over your head or your hair will stink. And don't even put them in the trash. You have to find a dumpster. Oh my God, you have to burn them." And with that, she grabbed the scissors and said, "Here, I'm going to help you," and cut my new golf shirt right off the back and started peeling it off me. I said, "Wait a minute, I have to get across the street first." I took off, my shirt flapping open in the back like a hospital gown. Once safely inside the garage, I lowered the door and stripped stark naked. It's a very odd feeling, being starkers in your own garage, stuffing your clothes in a plastic bag as if they were sprinkled with anthrax. So I went in, I showered, lathered, rinsed and repeated ad nauseum, and emerged in clean clothes. Most of me was okay, but my right palm still reeked of eau de skunklet. Recalling the old wives' tale about washing in tomato juice when you are skunk sprayed, I grabbed a bottle from the cabinet, poured it in a glass, added ice, and took a few sips. And vodka. Then I added vodka. Then I stood over the sink and poured the remaining tomato juice over my hands. Hand-wringing ensued, perhaps over how many Bloody Marys died in that process. During the next several hours, I sipped my Absolute with tomato juice and crossed my palm with Febreze, Glade Solid, Band deodorant, and for special odor control, 20 Mule Team Borax. Nothing. I suspected that they're too young to spray, now belonged in the Hall of Fame with You Can't Get Pregnant the First Time, and the check's in the mail. No harm, no foul, except the loss of a great golf shirt, an expensive bra, and my pride. But overall, it was a great gift from that stinky little fellow. He made my weekly column deadline a no-brainer. I called it Arrivederci Aroma. Meanwhile, another really bad smell was being eradicated in Delaware. Finally, after years of lobbying and legislative efforts, 8 years, as a matter of fact, March 2009 saw our first ever LGBT victory. We trounced the blabbering bigots and added the word sexual orientation to the state's anti-discrimination law. Then amazingly, just 3 years later, almost before the hate mongers could gear up, civil unions became the law. In addition, that was when plaintiff Edie Windsor, that wonderful 80-year-old lesbian widow from New York, wasn't she something? She was heading to the Supreme Court to try and overturn the Defense of Marriage Act. You know, when her longtime partner died, Edie was stuck paying a whopping inheritance tax on her own house. And she was denied spousal Social Security and more. We believe she was the perfect plaintiff and would succeed with marriage equality soon following. With our Canadian marriage on file, when same-gender marriage did become law, a civil union would automatically convert. So why wait to call the rabbi and smash the glass? We held our giant, big, fat Jewish civil union on our 30th anniversary. A perfect time to share with friends and family the celebration we missed when we eloped to Vancouver. It was on Tuesday, March 27th, a date we'd chosen 30 years before as our anniversary, commemorating our meeting in that silly glass pavilion in Baltimore. Besides, by now we were way too old to remember a new date. While the Canadian wedding was sweet and private, it was more political statement than life event. This religious ceremony under the canopy with friends and family felt very different. We felt married at home. And of course, we had to have a honeymoon. So Bonnie and I took a vacation to the White Mountains of New Hampshire. I was expecting a relaxing time, sipping gourmet coffee, mountain views, and maybe an errant moose walking across the road. But a zip line? When Bonnie suggested it, I knew it was way outside my comfort zone. But how bad could it be? I mean, I'd get a column out of it, right? I don't know what I pictured, maybe a starter zip or a bunny slope of zip lines. I was buttressed into my gear, complete with helmet and body harness. The guides attached me to a block and tackle pulley system on a cable between the ground and a teeny tiny platform on a tree about a mile down the mountainside. I was about to zip into the next zip code. Stand on the boulder, crouch to a sitting position, and push off, said Bigfoot the guide. And if you feel yourself spinning right or left, so just turn into the spin, like a car turning into a skid in the snow. Oh crap, I never understood that concept. I could feel Paul Bunyan's open hand on my back, gently suggesting it was time for me to keep going. Zippity-doo-dah, baby. I hit the air, the harness locked to the cable, and I was off, squatting, screaming, arms in the air, hanging by my thighs and my crotch. I started to spin, helpless to right myself, zipping backwards toward the tree platform. Incoming, incoming, I howled. Sure, I'd wipe out the unfortunate mountain man poised to snag me. Marginally alive, I was passed like a sack of Idaho potatoes from one athlete to another to get ready for the second zip. When my spouse landed on the platform behind me, I spat, "I'm going to kill you." Just as the guide told me to jump off, I gaped at the treetops below. I was supposed to leap into midair, trusting the skinny cable to keep me from free fall. I'd rather die than bungee jump. I can't even jump into my swimming pool, for Pete's sake. I can't do this, I muttered. You have to, said Sasquatch. There's no other way down. But by this time, zippers were piling up behind me as I stared, paralyzed, into the void. But I can't, oh my God! Jumped or pushed, we'll never know. They promised me a beautiful tree canopy. With my eyes shut, I could have been zipping over the county dump. Zooming into the next outpost, hands in a death grip, I wound up suspended in midair, swinging like a fresh side of beef. I mouthed, I'm going to kill you, to my mate, who appeared dangling behind me, refusing to make eye contact. It's a good thing we were married, because now I could file for divorce. Get ready for zip 3, yelled the bulky teenage guide, who suddenly tightened my harness so thoroughly I wanted to ask if he would at least buy me dinner first. Off you go, he hollered, sending me down the mountain, facing forward and picking up speed. I saw the look of terror on the face of the poor schnook waiting to break my fall. I practically flattened him, but he kept both of us upright and rigged me for zip 4. As I clenched my eyes and prepared for takeoff, I heard him say to the person I was formerly married to, things are getting better. This time she didn't say she was going to kill you. On this final ride, I zipped down, then back up to a high tree, then up and down 2 more times like Cirque du Soleil before setting in the middle of the cable, hanging like a pair of underpants on a clothesline. And that's so they could yell smile and take my picture. When they got the ladder to offload me, my legs were rubber, my arms lead, and even my hair was clenched. But I was happy to be on the ground, not in it. Well, what did you think? Ventured my spouse. Are you proud you did it? Truth is, yes, I was proud. Quite pleased with myself, actually. And at least New Hampshire's motto, live free or die, was not put to the test. Then, on March 27th, 2013, exactly 1 year to the day since our civil union and exactly 31 years to the day Bonnie and I met, oral arguments took place at the Supreme Court in Edie Windsor's case to overturn that Defense of Marriage Act. Bonnie and I bundled up and drove to Washington to rally on the steps of the Supreme Court. We spent 6 frigid hours walking around with a 4-foot sign announcing if gay marriage were legal, today would be our 31st anniversary. People cheered us. Youngsters looked at us like we were ancient. And reporters from everywhere, all over the country, interviewed us. And Bible-thumping picketers spit at us. Except for the spit, it was a thrill to be there. And of course, being spat at by the infamous Westboro Baptist Church just reeked of our theme of terrible things making good copy. There at the Supreme Court, the atmosphere was electric, and you could feel the tide turning in favor of marriage equality. Within weeks, Delaware's push for marriage equality was underway, and I was asked, among many others, to testify at Legislative Hall. Here is my testimony. My partner and I have been together 31 years. As young women, we bought a house, paid taxes, welcomed pets, encouraged each other's careers, spoiled nieces and nephews, socialized with neighbors, managed our parents' health crises, turned middle-aged, buried our first dog and cat, relocated to Delaware, weathered our own health crises, saved for retirement, said farewell to parents who recognized us as married, and now just became Medicare eligible. All of this together. We had a ceremony last year recognized as marriage by our religious institution, but only as a civil union in Delaware. We still don't have what we need most, a legally recognized marriage equal to our heterosexually married neighbors. Now we're retirees, and sadly just lost our remaining 15-year-old schnauzer. We urge the state to end our long run as lesser citizens. We need Delaware to pass the marriage equality bill, so when the Defense of Marriage Act falls, and it will fall, we will have the one thing we need, a legal marriage to qualify for federal equal rights and benefits. At the moment, we're debating whether we're too old for a puppy. This inequality has gone on long enough. Please grant all Delaware citizens marriage equality, and we'll let you know what we decide about the puppy. I did get a little laugh from the legislators on the puppy line. And in the long weeks between the hearings and the vote, an army of gays and our allies lobbied like crazy, wrote letters and talked to our legislators. It was a full court press. Then, on May 7th, 2013, in a razor-thin vote, the Delaware legislature approved marriage equality as law. Amazingly, weeks later, the United States Supreme Court sided with Edie Windsor and overturned the Defense of Marriage Act. She was awarded her marriage benefits, Social Security survivor benefits, and the tax relief she should have gotten when her spouse died. And those of us living in Delaware and other states with marriage equality got those rights too. So I wrote to the Delaware legislators who voted yay for marriage, thanking them and letting them know that we got a new Schnauzer puppy. We named him Windsor in honor of Edie. And in June 2015, with the Supreme Court having approved marriage equality nationwide, oh my goodness, wow, I remember that morning thinking I never thought I would see this day in my lifetime. Okay, it's nearly 3 years later. Where are we? Marching. Many of us, we're wearing wedding rings, but we're fighting increased discrimination and hatred. We've seen more than 20 years of forward progress, but will these laws be overturned? Some attitudes, as you know, are already crumbling. In the guise of religious freedom, it just might be the norm again to discriminate against gays and Jews and Muslims and women and others who don't fit the alt-right religious or ethnic mold. So what do? It's more important than ever for LGBT people and their allies to wear the rainbow, be out and visible, celebrate pride, and call out prejudice. Oh my goodness, and vote this coming November. In the meantime, as I age in place on the boardwalk bench in Rehoboth, life is good. I broke into show business at an age where I'd more likely break a hip. And I just applied for a part-time job teaching writing. Listen to this. They wanted my college transcripts. Will FedEx ship the stone tablets they were written on? On the application, I had to sign and initial the drug-free schools and workplace policy, listing the punishments for being found with drug paraphernalia. I hope that doesn't include the bong I now use as a planter. This was good. I had to initial the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. It told me they would make reasonable accommodations if I got pregnant or was lactating. Okay, just get that picture out of your mind. I went to initial the form, and instead of NA, I wrote NAU for no actual uterus. This latest episode, like most of my life, has been filled with stories. Now, you remember when we started this conversation, I talked about my father's insistence that nothing is so bad if it's worth the story you can tell. Recently, I got a call from our local newspaper asking to interview me and Bonnie for, of all things, this upcoming June bridal issue. thought I heard wrong, but no. They wanted some long-time married couples, evidently both straight and gay, to dispense advice to fiancés and newlyweds. We agreed to the interview, I hung up the phone, and we laughed like hyenas. So much for my dad's worry that I'd never be a bride if I bought a house with another girl. He would have loved the irony, and also the fact that I have made a whole career out of that adage that nothing is so bad if it's worth the story you can tell. Thank you so much for listening.
We'll talk.
Like birds of a feather, I won't tell no lie. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me state for the record, we're giving love in a family dose. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. Sing it to me. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. Living life is fun, and we just begun to get our share of this world's delight. High hopes we have for the future and our goals in sight. We know we don't get depressed. Here's what we call our golden rule. Have faith in you and the things you do. You won't go wrong. Oh no, this is our